Hello. Today we're talking about the payment request form. The payment request form is issued by WCS Treasury and Accounts Payable, and it enables WCS employees to submit requests for payments to vendors, counterparties, and even to employees for reimbursement of expenses. This video is specifically about the version of the form being released here in the fall of 2019. We did issue versions in 2017 and 2016. If you still are using those forms, you should upgrade to the new form because there are new enhancements. This video is specific to the new form. You can find out what form version you're using by looking at the upper right hand portion of the instructions tab or in certain other areas of the form. When you open the form, you'll see a message. Be sure to enable macros every time you open the spreadsheet. Always save it in a .xlsm format. That's because macros are a very important part of the spreadsheet. They automate certain functions and make it easier to use. The form won't work well if you don't have macros enabled. When you open the form, you may see a message here in the upper left-hand portion that says macros are disabled or certain content is disabled. Be sure to click on them to enable the macros or the content. You'll see that message depending on your security settings in Microsoft Excel. Let's take a look at the form itself. The form has multiple tabs. We're on the instructions tab. There's page 1 and page 2, which are the actual payment request form. The PDF backup tab allows you to upload and insert PDF documents as your supporting documentation for your payment request. The expense report allows you to complete employee items that you are looking to be reimbursed for as an employee. The purple tabs relate to payment information. There's the employee EFT form and the vendor EFT form. Click on those forms and they'll open up in Adobe Acrobat so that you can print them out and complete them and submit them. These forms are only for payments to US dollar locations, bank accounts in US banks, and not international payments. International payments is what you would complete for payments to vendors, counterparties, or employees overseas. You can input their bank account information, their bank information, and their intermediary bank if necessary. The restricted transaction tabs is an informative tab that reminds employees that there are certain entities and individuals that WCS cannot make payments to. These individuals often reside in certain countries. There are U.S. laws and regulations, and anti-terrorism legislation prohibits us from making certain transactions, and we have to abide by them. Please read this tab at least once. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the individuals listed here at the bottom of the form for more information. And the upload tab is used by Accounts Payable. That's not for general use. So let's go back to the instructions tab. Here we have some general information about completing the payment request form, the expense report tab, how managers should approve payment requests, and how you can go and provide information about banking instructions for your payments. At the bottom we have a special note for Apple computer users so that if they are having problems using this form, they should follow these instructions to increase the chances that they will be able to run macros and use this form properly. The video icons and these blue links lead to pages at YouTube, the WCS Treasury page at YouTube, where this video and others can be found. Let's move to the actual form itself, page 1. So you can see that there's a toolbar at the top with a bunch of handy icons. Add PDF backup. If you click on that, it will take you to the PDF backup tab and prompt you to upload your invoice or your grant agreement or your supporting information, your receipts. Save file, we'll save the file at your current default location. I'll give you a hint: if you upload an invoice or some document, then when you go to save it, it will save it to the same directory. Otherwise, it may go to your My Documents directory, and if you didn't know that, you might have a hard time finding it. Send for department review. You click on that to send this spreadsheet to your manager to approve your request for this payment to be made. Your manager will then approve it and send it to the accounts payable department. In rare instances, your manager may send it to payroll. This is for global payroll and benefits only. This is not for general use. It's not for salary discussions or reimbursements or whatever. This is specific to overseas employees who might get certain expenses paid for housing or education of their children. So you may never use that icon. Send the purchasing. Your managers may use this icon to send the purchasing only for new vendors or employees who've never received an expense reimbursement before, and that's because new vendors and new employees who've never requested reimbursements won't have a vendor number. There's a link here for videos, and that will take you to the WCS Treasury page. And here's an icon that's just used by accounts payable. Please disregard it. Let's talk about the form itself. Here, in this section, you'll be inputting information about the payment to be made and who you're paying. In the General Ledger Accounting Information section, you'll be putting information in about where or what department is going to be charged for those expenses. There's a section here for OFAC review to make sure that you know you're not sending these payments to restricted locations. And then there's places for signatures. So all in all, it looks complex, but it's relatively simple. But it has a lot of functionality. I have we're going to do a demonstration of just submitting a simple expense. I have a invoice for phone conferencing. I'm just going to type it in. Premier Global Services. You need to put in your vendor number. And some vendors have multiple vendor numbers. Why? Because their headquarters might be here in New York, but they want to get paid at a payment processing center in Kansas City. You need to make sure that you use the right vendor number to make sure that the payment goes to the right location. We have some vendors that have many locations across the United States, like the Nature Conservancy, and we have some vendors or employees that have multiple bank accounts. We can have an employee who has a bank account in where they're working in Cameroon and a bank account in their home country of France, and depending on where they want the payment to go to, the vendor number will determine where that payment goes. There is a link here. It says look up vendor number. Click on it. You gotta click on it. Hello. There we go. It goes to the Tiger portal and it loads up the vendor data sheet. You have to be connected to the WCS network for this link to work. So I'm going to type in Premier Global. You can see I have typed it in already, and here you'll see the information. Premier Global Services, vendor number 700-455. That's what you should put here under on the vendor number line. Let's go back and take a peek. We'll talk about other vendors real quick. So if you are sending a payment to the Nature Conservancy, I have it there already. These are not going to pop up for you. It's only because I've been recording this video like 20 times in the last 2 hours because I keep on making mistakes. But here, Nature Conservancy, we have 21 rows of Nature Conservancy vendor items. And you can see they're all in different states. So if you have a sub-grant agreement to help the Nature Conservancy in Montana, you need to use that vendor number. If you have an agreement with the Nature Conservancy in New Hampshire, you have this vendor number. Make sure that you use the correct vendor number, or else your counterparty will not get their money, and it will get lost, and it will hold things up. Let's talk about the Zoological Society of London. I use this as an example of an overseas vendor counterparty that has multiple accounts. They have 3. They have 2 in London. I'm not responsible for the formatting of the addresses here, and they have 1 in Indonesia. So notice here that the 2 in London have something says wire X and 4 digits. Those are the last 4 digits of the account number that vendor number is related to. So depending on the department of the ZSL that you want to make payment to, you have to go and check their account, your agreement with them, or their invoice, to see where they want it paid. If it ends in 411, you want to use this vendor number. If it ends in 7241, you should use that number. If it ends in yet another vendor number, then you need to contact accounts payable or purchasing and have a third or a 4th vendor number set up for them, because you need to make sure that it's going to get to the place you want and be credited to WCS properly. Okay, I have an invoice. I'm not going to look it up and get the exact one, but I'll just say I have an invoice number here. Under invoice number, if you don't have an invoice number, you should put something there. So let's say it's for an employee reimbursement for yourself. You could say, oh, I took a New York City taxi. Put it there. If you had to buy supplies, just say department supplies, right? Something like this. Or you could just say, you do this all the time, September reimbursement. Fine. You should put something under there. It doesn't have to be a number. In this instance, I have my fictitious invoice number. Put in the date. Okay, it's an employee reimbursement. You don't have a date, use today's date. Today is the 29th of September. And I'm just going to say it's $140. So, we have little question marks here. They'll give you some hints. If you don't have an invoice number, input something short and descriptive. Invoice currency, use the currency on the invoice or the currency in which you incurred expenses. Well, yes. So let's say you have invoices in euros, right? You can go and you add up your invoices in euros. You have euros, 1,000 euros. You want to be paid in US dollars, because you can go and set the payment currency for US dollars. If you have so that's a good example of invoice and payment currency. If you have an overseas vendor and the invoices are in euros, well, then put in euros. We want to send them euros. They are located in Europe. We're going to be paying to a European account. If you convert it all to US dollars and then send it to euros, they're going to lose on the exchange. Someone's going to take some spread on the exchange, and they're not going to get their full payment. So keep that in mind. Under reasons for expenditure, I'm going to say phone conferencing. If this was being sent overseas, you would see this on the wire that goes out. So if you're sending this to a hotel in Tanzania, you might say WCS conference, so that they know exactly what it's for. Or you say Echo Summit Conference, something. It's restricted to 32 characters because the field that it's saved in SAP is only 32 characters long. This field also shows up on budget reports. So when your manager or your vice president is looking at budget reports and says, "Oh, we have all this info, all these expenses for phone conferencing. What are they with Premier Global Services?" You can say phone conferencing, or I could say investment committee, and my boss would know what it was for. Under special instructions, this is for internal purposes only. So let's say you have an agreement with a vendor, and it's 40% down, to be paid immediately, and then the rest on normal payment terms. You could go and say deposit payments, pay immediately, and accounts payable will take it into account. They'll contact you, reach out to you. Or let's say you're receiving a check and you need to pick it up because you need to mail it or FedEx it with some supporting documents. You could say hold check, and they'll pick it up, so you can pick it up. Fine. Now, we have an invoice amount of $140 here. Lower down, if you go here, you see this big red error message. Oh my God, what does it mean? Well, it means that the sum of these lines don't equal $140. That's all it means. We want to make sure that if you put in 10 rows of information, that they add up to the invoice amount. It doesn't help anybody if they don't add up. So as soon as you put in $140, that message disappears. Fine. Now, if you have additional, or if you put in too much money, it will come back. Right. So if you have more than 11 lines of costing information, you click this box, check if continued on payment request supplement. See next page. You go to page 2, and now you have a whole new page where you can add a whole bunch of additional lines. It still does the same check that the total of your lines should equal your vendor amount. So if I put in $10 here, all of a sudden it's not going to add up. You see, so the form is semi-intelligent that way. Now, we'll point out here, you see it says form version 929/2019. That's the version we're using for this demo. Also here at the bottom of this page, form version is listed here. We'll probably have a later form version within the week, some date this week when we finalize the sheet and send it out. So here I'm going to put in my account, the cost account information, and my cost center, and that's more than enough for this. I can sign it here. I got to check off some boxes and sign it and send it off. But if you have WBS element or grant or fund that you need to put in, you do that. Now, I'm going to uncheck that box again. So here, if this was going to an overseas vendor and we needed to send a wire, there's a little message here. A charge to cover WCS bank fees will be applied to all payments sent by wire. Where's it going? Who are we going to charge? We're going to charge the costing information in this first line, the cost center or the project, and the fund or the grant. If you put 10 lines here, we're not going to divide the modest fee that is for the bank fee. You'll just have to do the accounting yourself. That's beyond the capabilities of the spreadsheet. If you are hitting a balance sheet account, well, balance sheet accounts don't use cost centers. Only revenues and expenses use cost centers or WBS elements. So here, this box will pop up here, and you would put in your cost center, your costing information here, so that we can properly account for the fees. Put this back to an expense account. Fine. Here, OFAC review. This is to make sure you're not sending payments to restricted individuals or locations. You need to review these lines. I've read the restricted transactions tab. I have checked the payment recipient and the beneficiary against certain lists. They're not restricted parties. This payment does not involve a sanctioned country or person thereof. So you can check these boxes. The red message goes away. If you're sending payment to an individual, let's say John Doe, and he's going to make the ultimate payment to a person who lives in a restricted country, you need to put that name right there. We don't want to subvert the laws and regulations that are put in place. You need to put that in. We will review it with the Office of General Counsel, and we'll let you know if your payment can go out. But don't lie about who we're paying. If you're paying a branch office or a WCS employee, you just go and check that. U.S. Patriot Review. If we're paying someone overseas, you need to include a LexisNexis Bridger report. The LexisNexis is a service that checks checks against databases of terrorists, anti-money laundering groups, officials who have known to be corrupt, countries that have issues, and they rate them and they give them a score. You need to submit one of those with all payments that are going overseas. You need to include it here in your PDF backup tab. If the score is over 75, it gets escalated to Treasury and to General Counsel if necessary. Usually there's false positives that allow us to go and send the payment, but you should be aware of that. You can get a Bridger report from certain individuals in Global Conservation, or you can go to purchasing and get one from the purchasing department. Okay, in this instance, I have checked my vendor against these items, and it's good to go. I'm going to sign it. I'm going to put in today's date. And when you press, don't be alarmed. It's just that we're at the end of the form. It's a protected form, and where does it got to go? It has no place to go. It goes back up. That's fine. But you're nearer to your icons too, so that's good. In this instance, I'm going to do a first, before I do a save, I'm going to upload my backup. Here are two icons to assist you with uploading information. Fine. The difference between the two is that this add the first backup, we'll just put it here in the first spot. You click on it, the macro is invoked. For me, I already have some invoices located here, and it's putting in there as an icon. If I double click on it, it will open in Adobe Acrobat Reader. There's my invoice. Now, if you have more, set your icon where you want the item to go, and then click on this one. Click on that one, and you can go and add additional items. Fine. Now, keep in mind that any macro just replicates steps that you can take yourself in Excel. So what do? Both these icons do an insert objects PDF. Right? So when I do it this way, it actually shows the entire invoice. I don't know why. Results may vary. You can also insert a zip file, or you can insert an actual Excel file if you have one by going Insert Objects, Create from File, and be sure to click on Display as Icon. And then you can go and choose your. I'm not going to choose the demo. You can't invoke itself. But if I had another spreadsheet, I could invoke it, and it would show up as a little icon over here, which is good when you have a lot of information, supporting information to relate. Okay, I'm going to save the file. I will let you know that when you save the file, it will save it to your current default directory. Now, if you just opened Excel, it's going to be your documents directory, and that's not necessarily where you want it to go. You may have problems finding it later. I will give you a hint that if you upload a document into the spreadsheet, it sets your default directory, your current working directory, to that directory. So this will be saved to my demo directory. When you click save or any of these others, it does do a save, and it will rename your file. Right now the name of the file is Payment Request Demo. So let's see, it takes this information, the vendor name, the invoice date, the invoice number, and the invoice date, and it creates a file name. And this is to assist accounts payable from differentiating multiple invoices that are submitted for the same vendor in their system. So here, a pop-up comes up. If Excel prompts you to save as, please do so. This file will be saved to your current default directory. Okay. Here it's changed the name of the file to Payment Request Premier Global Services, the invoice number, and the invoice date, and it's saved. Fine. I didn't have to do that. I could have just clicked on the Send for Department Review. So let's click on that. Payment requests to overseas locations, except for branch offices and employees, require a Bridger report, and it gives you a reminder to include one. If Excel prompts you to save as, please do so. Same message as before. We do this because when we first released the form, these pop-ups came up. People thought that it was malware or that they'd been hacked. So no, it's a WCS form. Don't worry about it. I'm going to replace the form that I have, and it's going to open up Outlook and an Outlook email, and you can put in the email address of your supervisor. This would go for me to Bob Calamo, but for the purposes of this demo, I'll send it to myself. You can include your signature, and off it goes. Send it. Off it goes. Now your manager will open it and review the backup documentation that you have, and then sign it themselves here, and then click on Send it to Accounts Payable if it's an existing vendor. If the employee or the vendor doesn't have a vendor number, then they would click on Send to Purchasing, and Purchasing will create a vendor record for them in SAP and then forward it to Accounts Payable. So that ends our discussion regarding the payment request form. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Treasury at treasury@wcs.org, or feel free to watch the videos. Again, we have more videos at the WCS page at YouTube. Thank you very much.